G'day and welcome back to Critical AFL on YouTube. Fun fact for the day, our suburb has a planned power outage, so that coffee of mine was made in the caravan. Today we'll be covering West Coast versus Richmond's pre-season scratch match at Mineral Resources Park yesterday morning. As I'm sure fans know, there's a heaps to discuss for a side that's basically in a rebuild with a ton of young talent coming off the pre-season. So I'll try and cover everything within a handful of categories, such as the biggest news from the day. There's two headlines you could put to the game. First one, Tyrell Dewar made a big statement. And number two is SSP midfielder Jack Henderson looked really good. And then within 24 hours got snapped up by the Melbourne Demons. So he's off the table. And we'll also cover who was best for the squad, as well as who fans or who you can get excited about as well. And then finally finish up with some key takeaways from the game. So I'll start with the best. I think at the top of that list was Jack Graham. He was pretty much everywhere and led the midfield with Yo, Kelly, and Reed all missing. So he was really that senior anchor within the midfield for the day. He's not an X-Factor guy, more of a reliable inside ball winner. But I've touched on the value of this in part 3 of our Players to Watch for 2025 video. Go back and check it out if you haven't. Just as to how much we've missed this since Jack Redden retired suddenly, early, just out of nowhere, I suppose, with long-term injury concerns. So one scratch match into 2025 with most of our senior mids or our starting midfield missing. I think we can already see that Jack Graham was a great free pickup under free agency already. The next one, which I'm really excited to talk about, is Tyrell Dewar. So I was taking live notes as this game was playing or while I was watching it, and immediately had Tyrell Dewar in the exciting players category. He's got a very reliable presence now. He laid a great tackle in the opening minutes and did exactly what you'd want from a player in any situation, if you know what that means. And then shortly afterwards, he nearly took Mark of the Year in the first of 3 periods because there wasn't quarters. There were 3 25-minute periods, no stop time as well. And then by the end of the quarter, I realised he was actually one of our best players. So not just somebody who's shown he's able to do exciting things at AFL level, but he'd also, by the end of the game, kicked goal of the match. Probably had his nose in front by quite a bit on Elijah Hewitt, who was second best goal of the match with the opener. And he nearly pulled down yet another massive hanger later in the match as well. So I think that's what's exciting watching that game. And if you get a chance, keep an eye out. You can't miss it. I think West Coast have been making a real star the last few years in Dewar. And I'd be very surprised if he doesn't start in round 1 on the wing. So there's my bold prediction for 2025 starting already. Another one of our best was Liam Duggan. He was also everywhere early, similar to Jack Graham. Very physical presence, made a lot of play happen. And he's a senior player now, so I know I've talked in other videos about guys that are a known quantity during pre-seasons, but the positive is he's turned up playing his best footy this particular pre-season scratch match, which I think bodes well for the season. Jaden Hunt was also really damaging throughout the 3 25-minute periods. His run was back to that elite speed that let him take players on with every possession. Richmond looked particularly slow out there, but that's probably another discussion, one that I'll add to the key takeaways of this video. But like Duggan, Hunt's also a bit of a known quantity. We know he's good. He's a senior player. But he's also returning from injury and an injury that slowed him down throughout last year. And that was actually one of the comments that I made during the Eagles to Watch in 2025 videos. There was one on players returning from injury or compromise. And I put him in that compromise category because it was very clear, and I think it was commented on, that he was a few Ks off his top speed. And that's really his brand. So I think it's really great to see him back out there at the top speed, just burning anyone he ran past all day yesterday. So that was really good. And then the last player I have inside the bests was Matt Flynn. Interestingly, he was actually more damaging at ground level than he was in the ruck. It's not to say he was losing the taps, but it wasn't like a standout that he was winning the taps. And I'm not quite sure what to make of that. I'd be curious to see what other fans have to say about that in the comments maybe. But I guess at the end of the day, the possessions he was taking was from stoppage. So even if he wasn't getting fantastic ruck work, he was clearing that ball really well by himself. He was treating smaller opposition players with contempt in tackles. So he really never struggled to get the clearance once he had the ball in his hands. I never saw him get caught, even though a lot of the guys tried. Was a big playmaker, and I think that's a big part of being a ruckman. So yeah, be keen to get everyone's feedback on what they thought about that and if they saw. But that's it for the bests. Now to the exciting players. Top of that one is Bo Allen. He had a lot of the football throughout the game. He looked confident at AFL level, didn't hesitate to get dynamic with the ball in his hand every time he had it. By that I mean he just took the game on when he had the ball. He didn't necessarily try and rush it. Guys in front of him, he just tried to bulldoze through. And I'm not saying he was, shrugging tackles and giving don't argues, but he always disposed of the ball well under pressure, in tight, and basically even in the tackle. So I think what was really clear is that he's got inside mid written all over him. He loves the physical contact and getting the ball out under pressure. And he's another guy that I would expect is banging pretty hard on the door for a round one debut this year. Not as big a bold statement as the Duar one, because I actually believe he'll be starting on that wing, but another guy who's really in contention early. Another exciting player, and I think someone that everyone's been excited about all season or all summer off season, was Elijah Hewitt. He hit every contest at pace, which I think everyone can picture who's seen Elijah Hewitt play just exactly how he goes about it. He's got incredible timing, and he hasn't lost that with all the lack of match exposure that he's missed, which was really good. And he did kick the first goal of the game in what, because of Tyrell Dewar, is the second best goal of the game. So yeah, he did a lot of good things out there, and yeah, he'll only be better off for this match experience. The next one, Jack Hutchinson. He played with a lot of, and he does do that, but he played the game with a lot of intensity. He really played that chaos ball that you can imagine McWalter was planning to bring to the side. There was one play, I think he pretty much moved the ball, just paddling it along under pressure. He had someone behind him for about 60 metres, and then someone came in for the side, and he continued to just belt it forward, and eventually actually took possession of it, made the play, and if I'm not mistaken, he set up a goal. And I think he did 3 goal setups. So there was one in the highlights reel you'll see to Noah Long, and I do believe he actually set up the one that Elijah Hewitt got as well. So he's a big playmaker and a very intense player. So another very exciting guy. Another one that was exciting, and for a known quantity, he's new to the side at least, and that's Liam Baker. He just looks like a freak talent, and I probably haven't followed him closely enough when he was at Richmond. I did see his highlights and stuff like that, but I mean, the way you look at Baker when he's playing, he plays it like, that really classy kid playing juniors. Like, he'll slide in at the right moment without, breaking that new sliding below the knees rule. Pops the ball out. He'll just nip the ball over people's heads. He's got a very unorthodox style, but incredibly effective. So, yeah, he was immediately showcasing why we, paid the price we did for him. And also with Bo Allen playing as well, it's not such a high price for anyone who's concerned about that one. And he's looking really good going into 2025. And then the final player to get excited about was Tyler Brockman. He kicked 3 goals. He doesn't get a heap of it, which is exactly what you'd expect from someone who's basically like a deep scoreboard hitting forward, small forward. But he's probably close to one of the last players in the AFL that you'd want to try and take on as an opposition player. Like his tracking, it's not even like the Phil Matera days where he'd run guys down trying to exit 50. Even if you're facing him and you try and wrong foot him, it's just, I think he got a couple of holding the balls on guys, and he finishes really well. Like, he only needs half an opportunity to put it through the middle, which he did 3 times. So yeah, he's for me, he actually looks like he's got a bit of Surioli about him when I see him play, which is a big call, but that's just the style at this stage that I saw. For anybody wondering why I cut the video in the very middle, it's because the power just came on and the house just made about 10 different noises at once. So we'll kick off where it was at that point, which I'm pretty sure I can snip back to key takeaways. Just finished up the exciting players. So the first key takeaway from the game was that, and take this with a grain of salt, I thought the Tigers were absolutely nowhere at the moment. And it is just a preseason game, and I'd usually be the first person to say that it's a big mistake to read into preseason games. But just in the context of, I suppose, how you rate our dominance. Just bear in mind that Richmond showed up with a very, very young side. And I know that we had no Yo, Kelly, and Reed, but they had no Tim Taranto or Hopper. So our midfield was missing more. But with the young midfield that we had, West Coast just basically controlled the game very casually from start to finish. And they just didn't look like they were interested in putting up a fight. So that's the first takeaway. Probably relevant for the Jaden Hunt comment that I made earlier about him just burning past everyone. He's got his speed back, but it looked ridiculously good playing against the speed and the chase and the lack of intensity that Richmond turned up with for that preseason match. Second key takeaway, West Coast has got genuine midfield depth. So as mentioned already, and I think I've mentioned it a dozen times now, we were missing, as more noises, we were missing our starting midfield, the Kelly, Reed, and Yo show, and they still basically controlled the game. You can say what you like about Richmond, but that does say something that we're not looking at younger guys just show their potential. The Eagles midfield looked very steady in their first hit out. The third one, our young guys are ready to start carrying their share. So with the exception of, Jack Graham, Liam Duggan, and Jaden Hunt, it was a very dominant performance by the side across the board, very much equally by the squad of 25 players. I'm not sure if it was 25 in the end because I know that I was expecting Clay Hall to play and he didn't see him. Most of those guys were young and they took advantage of a very ideal opportunity to really have a tune-up and a confidence boost early against Richmond, who I think opted just to bring some young guys across for, I don't know, I think Adam Simpson said on SEN was potentially a bit of a team-building exercise, just keeping it young and giving those guys the exposure. And then the final key takeaway was the SSP players. So Sandy Brock and Jack Henderson both looked very much deserving of an AFL contract by the time the game was over. Henderson, the inside mid from the VFL, as I mentioned earlier, was snapped up by Melbourne Demons within 24 hours of the game over here. And just to put a little bit of context on that one, probably sounds like poaching, but we only pulled him over here on a moment's notice when Dom Shee did his ACL very recently. He's from the VFL, so he's from Victoria. And when you're an SSP, you're not getting offered a very long or a very good contract. So, I mean, if he's getting offered something from a relatively local club versus a West Australian club on what we had to offer, I'd imagine it's a no-brainer. So disappointing for us. I think he would have been an excellent get, especially after watching him play yesterday. But he's already been picked up by the Melbourne Demons, and I think they did have interest in him already, and they recently had a list spot open. On the other side of that, we have 2 list spots available with Dom Sheed's injury. And my takeaway from yesterday was Sandy Brock, I thought, played a pretty decent game. He took some decent intercept marks and was very solid in defence. And I think he should be feeling reasonably confident that he's done everything he can to get himself one of those 2 list spots. And it would make sense for him to get that contract knowing that we can still keep one list spot open for the mid-season if we don't pick up James Van Ness, who's also a key defender. And apologies to James Van Ness because I've seen nothing of him, but I don't know that he was out there yesterday. And Sandy Brock did look like the guy who's in the box seat to take one of those spots. So that's all for the day. Thanks for having a listen. And if you do get a chance, what I've noticed from the YouTube analytics is there's a lot of repeat and return viewers, which means that there's non-subscribers who seem to enjoy the content and keep coming back to it. So if you are interested, please hit subscribe. It'll make it a lot easier for me in the future to get the turnaround on these videos, maybe a little bit quicker than late the next day. There's a busy schedule out of having little casual hobbies like this, and every single subscriber makes a big difference and helps. So thanks for tuning in, and until next time,